What would you hope listeners will learn or take away from your story, and what actions would you encourage them to take?
For those folks who in your life who have poured into you and created this sort of person that, and it doesn't have to be I named all of my sort of DEI social justice folks, but there are plenty of other folks in a non DEI lens, but giving them their flowers, so to speak,
Mhm.
while you have the opportunity, because this work is lonely and it's
Yeah.
hard, and you need to know that it's helpful to somebody, right? That what you're doing is impacting someone in a meaningful way. And as someone on the receiving end, right, we know that the folks are not always going to be here. And so
Mhm.
also letting them know while they're here so that they can receive that gratitude and that love in a way that they can share the space with you. I think that is important. So if you've got a mentor, a sister friend, a cousin, or whoever, right? And don't just say, I'm just so grateful. Yeah, you can say, I'm just so grateful. But also, you literally changed my perspective on something.
Yeah.
You
Fill
literally
in the
gave me,
details.
yeah, fill in the detail.
Yeah.
You really gave me language that I didn't have before. And I am grateful for that. Is, I think, something that one, they would love to hear. And then two, as a very empathetic person, I think it is a good thing to share and to share that space with people. So
Mhm.
that's one. Two, we talked about the educational curriculum in my space, right? Of thinking about what, not seeing myself in the K-12 system and then finally seeing myself as seeing my family, my history in college, and that sort of awakening and all of those things. And history, books, language. I'm a reader, so I recognize that everyone doesn't read books, but and that's not their ministry. I understand that books are not everyone's ministry. I get it. But I think there is a beautiful thing in taking a course or two or reading a book or watching a movie or whatever, one in your sort of lineage, right? But then also in an alternative sort of space, right? And seeing that perspective and how that sort of culturally relevant sort of education adds a nuance and a lens to the way you view things.
Mhm.
Um, can really nuance you and grow you as a person. And I would empower folks in the DEI space. I know this to be true. We stay in race a lot. We put race, especially in the US context, we put race at the forefront of a lot of
Mhm.
DEI conversation. Our country was built on racist practices and a system on race. And also just continue to nuance DEI work and to push us forward. We need to be very intentional about educating ourselves in the queer space, in ability. Ableism is so under talked about. It is, and I will name that I am by no means the end all be all of health, equity, and accessibility and ableism and all those things. I am very much in my journey in that space, but it is astounding that 1 in 5 people either is disabled or will have a disability at some point in their life. And we don't talk about it. Then it is this nuanced thing. It's watch a documentary, read a book, as to go on TikTok.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
or I'm a millennial, so go on Instagram. But whatever your
Whatever you use. Yeah.
whatever you use, I'll just type it in and see what the people are talking about.
Mhm.
Honestly, because we have to continue to push the conversation and it's necessary. The last thing I would say is for us to continue to reflect, especially those of us in the DEI space who work for institutions or corporations, or I worked in consulting for a while who works for institutions and corporations. How do we balance that pushing and pulling that we talked about earlier when we were talking about the union space of how do we balance negotiating social justice values, ethics, policies, and working with spaces that we know are oppressive.
Mhm.
And by no means have, and I have no answer for this, but I think we all need to think about and be reflective on what that looks like and how are we navigating that and negotiating those things both internally? Because I often internally have to be like, okay, was that a win? Did I win? Did we,
Yeah.
or is it a win? Is it a win? Or
Mhm.
is it a win at all? Or how much do I push? How much do I push this executive team, this organization, this whatever, without overwhelming folks? And how much do I not push? What is the sort of I have
Yeah.
not found the balance, but I think it is a conversation collectively as DEI folks we don't really talk about. I think we
Mhm.
all do it, and I think we all think about it, but as like a collective, we never think about, okay, how do we navigate that? Because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think reflecting on my consulting experience and thinking about, okay, so there's this capitalistic, like I need money, like we need money from you,
Yeah.
and how much do I push when I still need this sort of like capitalistic reward, right? I need
Mhm.
to have my lights and my gas on. But
Yeah.
also, like one of my former clients is a very large online retailer, and knowing that they have some very inequitable business and employee practices, and how do you the thing for me is I was working for a company, and so it's I have to go with whatever the company is sort of saying
Mhm.
is our practice. But it's like when you're in the space, if I've got the ear of the one a very large online retailer, do you just go for it? You know,
Yeah. Do you
I
just
think.
go for it? Do you just go for it? And I've thought of that too. And I feel like it calls for some communities of practice for us to get together more and share some of our ups and downs and the things that we found to be successful. It's sometimes even having those situations and it's okay. And a part of this work is supporting the organizations and moving them closer to making sure that their equity goals match with their actions and the values that they state, like what they say is actually being felt and experienced by not only the people that they say that they're serving, their customers, the community they want to serve, show up for, but then also the people who are inside of their organizations and make it all run, like making that more consistent. Sometimes the work is about that. I feel like sometimes the work's also supporting those folks with marginalized identities within the organizations, trying to get the work done. It's like
Mhm.
your practices, the practices of this larger organization isn't where it needs to be right now. And how can we support you as people trying to do the work within it? And then,
Mhm.
and this is just me. And then sometimes I feel like it's about through the assessments, through the interviews, the focus groups, the data analysis, and sharing all those things and getting the response back from leadership. Sometimes the work can be about, all right, so we've honored what it is that you all have shared with us. And so sometimes it can be about giving the folks who are within the org all the info they need to know whether or not they want to keep going or make other plans for how they want to spend their time. But when
Yeah,
you said that
but
though, it
it's
made me think about
nuance, right?
it's nuance. It's nuance.
It's
It's
so
nuance.
nuanced.
It's nuanced and it's not easy. And like you say, we still live in capitalism and it's designed in such that it makes making ethical decisions very hard for everybody. Somebody even
Mhm.
made comment when we were on a different storytelling session around, hey, even the computer I'm using, if you look deep enough, like you can find the ways that capitalism and exploitation shows up. I appreciate your sharing because for me, it brings up, it's just a need. We need to actually spend more time. Like you said, we're doing it in terms of making the decisions in our own different spaces and when we're working with folks, but we need to
Mhm.
get together more and talk about it with each other because we may be able to help one another negotiate that a little bit better. Yeah.
Exactly. I think that goes back to our dialogue background. It's a different perspective always helps me inform my negotiating of, okay, are we on the right track? Is this sort of, am I pushing you far enough? Because there are ways that when you're writing up the report or writing up the focus groups that I could definitely emphasize these things or be like,
Yeah.
you need to do this. And or is that too much? Is it like, okay, maybe I need to like dial this back a little bit?
I'll always go back to the lesson that you're sharing here too. You described traveling and how that opened up your perspective in many ways.
Mhm.
But even in that experience, the idea of just getting, like you said, getting those other experiences, multiple experiences in to open up our perspective, even to let us know in the difficult moments, it's like, what are the wins? What are we doing that's
Mhm.
moving? Because I see it as like a historical thing. Like we're part of a long line of folks who have lived and moved it in the ways that they could. And here we are trying to do it for other folks. And so I love that idea. Yeah, we need to get together and talk about this more. That specific
I
thing,
mean,
like that nuance. Hmm.
that's a podcast episode, Rolando. This is
I think
season
so.
2. Courtney comes back. We have a whole round table. Let's do it.
I think so. I think so. I might put it under the educational segment where it's you and we get a panel of folks together and we all just sit and we talk. It's certainly room and space on this platform to do that. So I might,
Double back. I'm ready because
yeah,
it is so interesting. It's somewhat, I don't know if you feel this way. The consulting space is somewhat individualistic, right? Like it's
yeah,
you or like your firm or whatever working with the client. So there's very little like us talking
yeah,
collectively, at least
yeah.
as far as I've seen thus
Hmm.
far. I mean, you might run into each other at a conference or something and be like, what are you, how's that going? But it's also a part of that is capitalistic, right? Because you're always
Yep.
trying to find the next, I'm trying to get clients. I'm trying to keep the lights on. But I think in the DEI space, the collectivist idea of us sharing knowledge, I think would be a beautiful thing. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. And we need to, that's another one. So yeah, we get some folks together to talk and then we'll get you and some other folks together to talk about the ways DEI itself has been used and it being co-opted into a pejorative term for folks too. And let's unpack that for a minute.
Ooh,
You know what I mean? So we go,
ooh,
yeah,
ooh,
yeah. So
ooh.
we'll get some folks together and talk about that. Cause just say what you really want to say. Just say it. But
Oh,
definitely.
or our DEI candidate.
Mhm, mhm.
Our DEI candidate. Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about this. Let's think about this a little bit deeper and see. And then sometimes, honestly, stuff like that, then that early undergrad, that college Rolando comes out. Wait a minute. Yeah, I still remember these books when affirmative action was white. Start throwing stuff out there.